when I asked what she did, because she was there at the church all the time while we were there, and she was kind of sit in the corner, but then when we would leave, she would get up and get busy. And so she was, I guess she kind of cleaned the church, and had dirt floors. And when I think of cleaning the church, I don't, in my mind it's completely different, I guess, what they experience there. But she cares for the church and the basic maintenance of the inside and everything, and just does what needs to be done. And she was just a sweet little old lady. I mean, she was probably 70s, if I had to guess, and short and just full of the Holy Spirit. I mean, she was just, God was just all over her the whole time we were there. Well, there was one evening where the guy who drove our bus, he had to go to make a delivery in a different village for the feeding program. So there were a handful of us left at the church at the very end of the day after we cleaned everything up, and we were left there waiting on him to come back and get us. And so these people that we were left with, Steve and Jane, they were pastors in Sneeds Ferry, North Carolina, and there were a couple others, and they're big singers. They love to sing. They sing all the time. If there's a song they sung, they're going to sing it. They're going to sing it, over and over, and it's great, and we love it because, it kind of breaks the ice and makes everybody laugh. So it's all good. So we were sitting there, and we were singing different songs, and we were trying to think of hymns that we can sing. Well, Miss Esmeralda, Elsa, okay. Esmeralda, Elsa, okay, Elsa. I should know that person. Elsa, she was there, and she was kind of sitting off to the side, and we had one that was playing the guitar, and we were singing. Well, we ran out of songs to sing that we all knew. So Pastor Steve had a favorite song, and it's his all-time favorite song, and he loved singing it. He said, I want to do this one, but it's not a Christian song, but we can still do it. And it was, Nate, are you ready for this one?
Put a light on the bar,
John Denver.
early to rise, early inside. Thank God I'm a country boy. With a simple kind of life, baby, no harm.
So that was our song that we sang. John Denver's Thank God I'm a Country Boy. And that was Pastor Steve's favorite all-time song ever. So we sang that song. Well, Elsa sat to the side, and she just clapped, and she was into it and everything, and she loved it. So we had the three-part harmony going on, and it was great. So at the very end of the week, after we had wrapped everything up, we had done our dedications on our stoves and our houses, she comes up to Pastor Steve, and she's trying to tell him something.
She starts clapping.
She's clapping like this, and she wants him to sing that song. Well, I guess she thinks, because it says, you can hear the word God in it, I think she thinks it's a Christian song. She doesn't know what we're singing. So she said, on him, sing this song, sing this song. So we sat there, and we sang Thank God I'm a Country Boy while she had her hands in the air, and she was praising God, and it was just the best thing in the world. And that is proof that it doesn't matter what words you have. It has nothing to do with the words. It has to do with the Spirit of God, because he was all over her on Thank God I'm a Country Boy. It was great. I had goosebumps. And, at the very end, she says, hallelujah, and she went into a prayer that could have just moved mountains, I believe. It was great, and she was amazing. So I guess, did you have anything you want to add about anything at all before we turn it over? So I guess that's pretty much it. We want to thank everybody here that has supported any kind of outreach or missions or has given to the church at all. If you can give in any capacity, you're the missionary. So anything you do is a help to the kingdom of God and to get the gospel out there to others. At the end, like I said before, at the end we had about 40 children give their lives to Christ. We had about 15 through the iPhone to give their lives to Christ. Given teaches in 7 different villages now. They have over 1,000 kids in their feeding program. And you can we sponsor 2 kids, $20 per child per month. That's something that you can do if you're interested. I'll be happy to share more of that after service. So, yeah.
That's us.
So we were the second group to go to El Sonora, and our plan for the week was to build a house for a family and build 2 stoves and then do VBS each day. And the night before we went, we kind of like sat around we did devotions every night. So get out of the week. And for me, I said that my gift was nurturing and loving, especially on little kids. So I was like, I just want to be used that way to share God's love. And the first day we got there for VBS, I got to hold a little baby the whole time, so I got to do all that. And then in the mornings we would build, and then in the afternoons we do VBS. So the first day we got there to start building, Miss Elsa comes out. We didn't know who she was. We thought she was the one getting the house, but she comes out, she's hugging everybody, and she's praising the Lord, lifting her hands up, and one phrase that she said that I understood was, Jesus Cristo es mi Padre, so Jesus Christ is my Father. So it was just awesome. We hadn't even started yet, and she was already praising God, and then throughout the week she was there. She was doing the crafts with the kids, doing the crafts for the kids if they weren't doing it right. She was like everyone's grandma, basically. We weren't sure how many kids were going to be coming because we heard from the first group that at first it was like 6 kids, and then later it turned out to be 200. And so, but we packed all that we had, and we ended up every day we had about 200 kids. And we had a little tiny church. We were making benches out of wood and cinder blocks and everything, putting the color on. And one day we had a doctor come in and help some people there. He had a list, and I had noticed before that the babies that I was holding, some of the kids, had this rash on them. And I thought it was maybe from the heat or something. And so I asked him before we went there, and he said that it was bed bugs. Because they all sleep in the same bed. And so all the little kids and babies, they have all these bug bites. And so that really touched me out. I was hoping for better, but one day I was holding one of the, I cannot say his name, it's a very long Hispanic name, but I was holding him. He wasn't laughing for anyone. He was smiling, and I got him to go to sleep, and then I noticed he was like sweating really bad, so I got up and I went to the door because there's no like ventilation in the church, and I got up to the door, and as soon as like the breeze hit, he had this huge smile on his face, and that image just stayed in my head throughout the whole week. I thought of it as if we're in a tough spot, if we're going through something bad, God is always there to breathe on us and to give us some peace and some joy in just a little moment. And I cried every night throughout the week. So, one thing that really stuck out, it was at the end when we dedicated the house. It turns out it was Elsa's daughter and her family. We kind of said everything. We were around there, and she invited us in. So we went inside. She was showing us her house. She was so happy. And Elsa, she was like standing off in the back of the room, and she looked her hands up and just started singing at the top of her lungs. And she was praising God, and we just all sat there. We didn't know what she was singing, but we were just like, we know it's for you, God, and we were worshiping with her. And then she went around hugging everybody, and she got to the last person, and she just fell to her knees, just crying and praising God, and we were all crying. It was just, I had a thought earlier that we found out that she was actually the one who helped build the church. She had been there for over 50 years. She helped start the church there, and she taught everyone there patience for God, because this is the second time that someone came in there, the missions trip came in there, and she waited over 50 years to get a house for her kid. And so it was just amazing just to see that, like her praising and all that. And a couple days later, after we got back, I had like the Bible app and everything, and this verse came up, and it just kind of summed up the whole thing. It's 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18. It says, "Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." So just anything, if you want to praise God, raise your hands, just sing out loud, even if you don't sing great, it doesn't matter. God wants to hear it, and if you need something, just pray about it, and it might take over 50 years, but He will provide for you.
So pretty much
this was our first business trip. Before I go into just the main things that just really is what you need to grasp about the trip, I think it'd be good to kind of understand the situation in Guatemala. 80% of the entire country is owned by 40 families. So 40 families in Guatemala own 80% of the country, of its wealth, of its land, of everything. So what you have is you have a very few amount of people who do not want the rest of the people to have anything. And they use everything that they have to ensure that that happens. So it's very difficult. Here, I've worked in a lot of homeless situations back in North Carolina when I lived there. So I wasn't surprised by the poverty, but I was surprised by the fact that you can't climb out of it. Because there are this whole culture, the whole system is set up to keep you impoverished. As an example, in the village you don't see many men, they're outside working in the fields. They work for 30 quetzal a day, 12 hours for 30 quetzal, which translates to $4 US. So a high school kid working at Chick-fil-A making a minimum wage, 1 day of work, a 6-hour shift, you make what they make in half a month, working 12 hours a day. So you look at that, you can't afford doctors, you can't afford to send your kids to school, and if you don't have an education, you have absolutely zero chance of ever becoming anything in this country. So give and teach, that's why they work through the schools, and they say, look, come here, we'll give your kids food, we'll give your kids shoes, but you have to put them in school. So that the consequence of them making the sacrifice is good. It gives them incentives. And the number one cause of death is respiratory infection, as Becky was talking about, from all this smoke they're breathing in. So that's why when we give a stove, we have to take out the old one. So that way they're not using it. And it makes no sense if they keep the old one and they're still breathing all this smoke. So that's kind of what you're going into. You're going into a system that can be looked on as pretty hopeless. But some things that really stuck out. First of all, this was our first year anniversary of marriage. We use this as our trip. And that I got a lot out of. I kind of joked with the service full of people who are seasoned in life. And I said, in a year I thought I'd learned all I did about my wife. But then I found out, wow, there's more to learn in the first year. Which obviously I know there's a lot more. But just getting to see her and see God use her in a way that I don't get to see, I guess, as vividly, because it is such a big need that when you just jump into it, just how it takes over, getting to see that was amazing, and it really made me value her as my wife even more, and to get to see what God's doing in her life. Probably one of the cool things that happened, there were some kids that wanted a photo of themselves because I was taking photos. And the unique thing is a lot of these kids didn't even know what they looked like because there's no mirrors in the village. So you can't know what you look like. And so a lot of these times they look at a picture, which one's me? And it's crazy to think you don't know what you look like. So they asked me if I could print out a photo. I told them I couldn't because I had no way of printing it out, and you don't want to promise nothing you can't give. But I talked to Carol, who is the wife of Mike, who are the two missionaries we went to go see. And they said, well, let's see if we can work something out. So we found a little cube that prints off stuff, and we had to use an iPad. I mean, if you want the for real list of what we had to go through to get this, come see me after service. But it was like climbing over mountains, jumping through valleys just to get this thing rolling. And then after all that, we weren't even sure we'd have enough film to take all the photos of the family groups. And sure enough, we got all the photos taken without even having to change one roll of film. And it was just like, wow, it was awesome. Another moment that God really provided was in the school when we were giving away shoes as part of the school program. We had all these sizes and bags set out for classrooms, but as more kids were coming, it was like, oh, these shoes are too small, we need a bigger size. Shoes are too small, we need a bigger size. Well, the problem with that is you start to run out of bigger sizes because no one buys big sizes for there because the average person's foot is like a size 9. So you start needing bigger sizes and you don't have them. Size 6. And so we thought we were going to run out of shoes, and Pastor Richard and Pastor Mike were there, and they just kind of said a prayer about, Lord, you multiply the fish, we need you to multiply these shoes. And once they did that, you started people hearing say, oh, these shoes are too big, we need a smaller. These shoes are too big, we need a smaller. And we had more than enough shoes by the end of it for all the people, and it is so great to see basically what you read in Scripture be lived out right here in front of your eyes. The whole trip was just fantastic. Getting to see how all this is, and I'd say the biggest lesson I learned through all this was perspective and the way that I pray. Because like when Nikki and I had our scare with cancer, I love our friends and our family that were there to support us, but a lot of them were reassuring us with things like, well, don't worry, you'll go, you'll have this test, you'll have this, and then they'll do this, and they'll have this procedure, they'll have this treatment, you'll be fine. There it was different. If people are sick, they go straight to God because they can't afford a doctor, and God is the only hope they have. And so to me, that showed me that in my prayer life and in the way I see God, it doesn't need to be when a problem comes up. It's if a problem comes up. And so I'm going to God to prepare me before the problem arrives. That way, when the problem arrives, I know who to look to. Rather than do your own thing, and when a problem arrives and you can't tackle it with your first, second, third option, then you go to God. So that was probably the biggest lesson I learned. And then one last thing to throw at you. When I first went there, I kind of thought, why Guatemala? Out of all the places, why Guatemala? And I learned a pretty crazy link between the Carolinas and Guatemala is one big problem in Guatemala is the sex trafficking trade. And the number one place that kids in Guatemala that are sex trafficked are sent to are the Carolinas. North and South Carolina is the number one place in the world that Guatemalan children are sent to during the sex trade. North Carolina is the 10th worst state in the nation for sex trafficking because of I-40 goes coast to coast. So, that hit me even harder to go, this does impact me because I live in a place that literally some of these kids might be sent to. And it's just a thing, that's what needs to be, I guess, kind of taken from this is, do what you can. Do what God puts on your heart. Because there are real people in real need all around the world. And no gift is too small. Because literally, when $4 makes one day of their wage, $4 is a lot of money to them. And so I encourage you guys just to continue praying for Guatemala and people all over the world. Continue praying for our states that there literally are people here that would use these people in such a way that God would impact their hearts and that God would also bring justice and His will. But also just be praying for Mike and Claypool as they continue to work in Guatemala because it really does change lives.
And there's another way to sponsor a child as well. You can do to send them to school, have their uniform and all the school supplies. It's $100 a year. It's one child to go to school and to stay in school and all that. So
it's his uniform, his food, his books, everything is $100 a year. And the sponsor a kid's feeding program is $20 a month. And that gives them literally crazy nutrition.
And we wanted to thank everyone that donated socks. They loved it. Whenever we did do it, we would new shoes on and they're all excited. And what's crazy is when we were leaving, all the kids had their old shoes back on because they didn't want to mess up their new shoes. They wanted to keep it safe and all that. So it's just awesome. And thank you guys so much for providing that.
Wow, tough act to follow. So, something a little more local that I want to talk about is the Upstate Family Resource Center. And they are right here on the corner. If you don't know about them, the corner of the street. One of the things that you can do to help them is supporting through donations, monetary donations, but time as well. They've started a new project called Strive to Thrive University. And it's basically, short version, requiring the folks that need assistance, that need help, that are coming in for food, that are coming in for clothing, that are coming in to help with their power bill, whatever it is that they're helping with, they earn credits. And they can put it towards a box of food. They can put it towards their power bill. And they're actually coming in and learning computer skills, communication skills. They're working with vocational rehab. They've also set up a partnership, so to speak,